The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
There we go. It's 9 o'clock on the dot. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Excellent, excellent. Good morning, everyone. If you follow me on Facebook, you know that webinar days are my favorite days. Providing topical education and resources to the home building industry is a big priority for us at Lasso. And what's even better is when you get to do it with our partner friends. So my name is Angela McKay, and I'm the VP of Client Experience at Lasso. Back in May, we held a digital marketing event in Nashville, and I think some of you on here may have been part of that. And Lasso Group 2 Rendering House and Builder Designs, along with our premier sponsor, Zillow, held that event. And the event was really well received, and we were asked to hold a few of our sessions again. So they are encore performances as webinars, and this is our third one. I'm really excited to have Jake Scherrer, Zillow's Senior Director of Builder Regional Sales for New Construction. Did I get that right?
You did. Great.
And Matt Riley, Vice President at Group 2, are joining us today. And Jake currently works in the Zillow New Construction Marketplace, where he leads regional sales teams. He directs strategy and works to grow strategic, easy for me to say, business partnerships with the builder community. And Matt specializes in online sales and marketing and helps clients achieve better ROI on their marketing and sales strategies. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I hand the reins over. The webinar is being recorded. That's always the #1 question. And you will receive a copy of the recording via email. Likely, we usually send it out within about 24 hours. So hold tight, but as you know, webinars are always better live. Because so please ask your questions. Everyone is muted, but please ask your questions in the question box in the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We will try to get to that. The webinar will be about 45 minutes or so today, and then we'll have some time for questions as well. So thank you all for joining us, and over to you, Jake and Matt.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I can speak for Matt. We're super delighted to be able to present this to you today. Just bear with me for a second because I'm going to do a little housekeeping if I can figure this out real quick. I'm going to mute my...
And I'm going to turn my camera off. There we go.
Up showing my webcam. I should be gone. And then I'm going to... All right. Somebody... obviously hit me up if you're not seeing what you should be seeing, which is understanding consumer motivations in a digital world.
We're seeing Matt.
We still see
me.
We're seeing Matt.
That's funny. How about
now?
There we go. There we go. Now we're seeing Matt on the presentation, so that's perfect.
All right. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so once again, thanks for having us. I don't know, Matt, you have a couple words to kick us off with?
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciate everybody joining in. And if you guys have heard me talk on whether it's podcasts, whether it's IBS or PCBC or Home Builder Tech or anything in general conversation, one of the things that I've consistently been saying, and I think it even is that as time goes on this year, it becomes more and more true, but currency for 2019, the currency of 2019 and moving forward is data, and really how impactful that is. And so what we're going to discover here and what Jake's going to walk us through is we know that Zillow is such a big powerhouse of data and information with what consumers tell them and how they interact on their platform. And Jake's going to walk through a lot of this information, and we're going to kind of decipher that together and really kind of unpack all the different things that would be applicable to us as builders and in the home building industry, and just really going to see how it's going to help us make better decisions as we go. So really excited to dive into that. So Jake, if you want to jump into your
slide. Yeah, so, you guys know the industry. We're not obviously here to try to tell you how to do your job, but what we're trying to do is add some color, some commentary to hopefully so you can make some decisions around your marketing. So first off, Zillow each and every year, and I know many of you have probably heard this before, but we conduct a survey, and we survey over 13,000 key households. And essentially we're getting feedback, and we're surveying buyers, sellers, homeowners, renters, long-term renters to come up with this consumer housing trends report. And it's a rather thick booklet. You can actually download the full version at Zillow. But what's great is that this year, and from basically last year into this new year, we've done a deep dive on new construction. So for the first time, we have our own set of data where we've extrapolated all that new construction information to come up with our own book. I'll talk about at the end how you can download your own copy, and then I'll give you guys kind of a preview of when to expect the next one. But today, we're going to go over a couple things. So we're obviously going to talk about buying new construction today. Who is the new construction buyer? How do they search? Why most people don't buy new construction. I think that is a key that, I think a lot of times we maybe miss on. We talk so often about all the good things. What are we doing right? But here we're going to talk about a couple of the opportunities for some improvement. So who considers new construction and why don't they purchase? And that's going to unveil some marketing opportunities for all of you. And Matt's going to expand upon that a little bit. Okay, so the first slide, and there's a couple slides, and we'll make a point to highlight just the overall importance of it, but this is really setting the tone of the entire webinar, right? So 38% of total buyers are including new construction on their consideration list, which is huge, but there's still a gap, right? And there's a gap between growing populations and the industry struggling to house them. So during the recession over 10 years ago, new construction pretty much came to a halt. So after 10 years of issuing fewer permits for single family homes, underbuilding, there's still a gap today of about 2 million homes in the market, but there's a lot of people that are considering new construction in their kind of initial home purchase. And then 11% are actually purchasing new construction. I know Matt has some color on this, but this is the theme, and this is the thing that we want to try to do, is close that gap between those who consider and those who ultimately buy.
Yeah, guys, the goal of all the data here as we're going through it is to decipher through and say, okay, great. We see that 38% of all transactions out there, of all the buyers, considered new construction. And we have to have a deeper understanding of why customers are only choosing, or only 11% of them are choosing to buy new. So like Jake said, we want to figure out, how do we close that gap? And to figure out how to close the gap itself is diving a little deeper on who is buying new construction all across the board, and then also really what that looks like and how we're handling from a marketing perspective and from a sales perspective, how we're handling that customer all the way through the process, and are we meeting their expectations? And do we even actually know what those expectations are? And that's what we're going to unpack as we go through some of this data here.
And despite all these challenges, our research suggests that there's an opportunity and willingness among experienced builders and buyers to narrow that gap, right? So we've spoken to so many of you interested in narrowing that gap. At the same time, we know that there's interested buyers out there. So we're going to take a look a little bit at who is actually buying new construction. So our data suggests that the new construction buyer, it's actually a little bit older. The median age is around 47 years old, and 65% of new construction buyers are actually 39 years old or older. This is huge, because if you think about, there's so much talk about millennials and how to reach them, and that obviously should be a focus of your marketing. But right now, there's an older generation that are still purchasing new construction. And it's largely because they're more financially secure. They're repeat buyers. These are individuals who, they're living without their kids in their home. And they're also willing to move farther because they have already figured out what it is that they like and don't like in their house. And so because they have that extra income, because they're a little bit closer to retired, they're a little bit more willing to go with new construction to build a home that fits their needs. And then you take a look, like I mentioned, the median age being 47 for new construction and about 40 years old for existing buyers. And the biggest point here is that, yeah, millennials, they're purchasing what we call, right, used homes at a much higher rate. But that older generation, where it's 65%, 39 and older on new construction, it's 54% for existing home buyers.
And as we'll unpack as we go a little further into the data too, we'll start to see why some of the new construction buyer tends to be a little bit older. And, and really it comes into that perception of the pricing between a used home that's on the market and what the gap is between new and used. And right now, depending on your market, it can be anywhere between a 20 to 30% gap. And so you start thinking about what that looks like as far as pricing separation, and why that buyer tends to be a little bit older is they're more established in their career. They're making more money. They've paid down or paid off some of that debt, but all from student loans or whatever. But also they've bought their first home or their second home, and now they're moving on and they understand what they want and what they don't want, which is why one of the reasons I think the new construction buyer comes in typically to be a little bit older, because they've gone through those same mistakes that everyone else is going through on their first and second home. And now they really have a much better understanding of what's important to them now versus what they used to think was important to them.
And we're not saying ignore millennials. We're just pointing out the fact that the older generation, or at least 39 or older, are the ones who are actually purchasing new construction now. But millennials are the fastest growing segment, so you obviously do not want to leave them out of your marketing plans. New construction buyers, they're more likely to be retired. So I'm just going to kind of further some of these stats. Nearly 2/3, 65% are still working compared to 71% in existing home sales. And about 20% of new construction buyers are currently retired compared to 14% for existing home sales. This is probably one of my favorite slides. And I think it does a good job, not just pointing out kind of the data, but it's really illustrating, the importance of who your audience is and how, your advertising needs to ultimately match your audience. So, 12% of new construction buyers, they're buying in the same neighborhood. 34% are actually purchasing in the same city, but different neighborhood. But the biggest number, over half of new construction buyers, are purchasing in a different city, state, or country, which is, this is something that most people, I feel personally, that from builders that we talk to, ignore or don't highlight nearly as much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, having a relevant, big, comprehensive digital footprint is key to reaching this audience.
Yeah, and in today's age too, the way that we can target, obviously, as you read the news and you see, Facebook as an example is one of those companies that's starting to take some of these, you're not able to target age demographics or things like that anymore. But with AI in place and other geographical locations that you can still target, it still allows you to go after the right customers that you need to be in front of, and understanding that where our customers are coming from has really makes a big impact on where. It can still be a big footprint, but much more of a rifled approach instead of the shotgun approach. You're just trying to throw something against the wall and see what sticks.
And once again, your advertising needs to match your audience. It needs to match their needs. It needs to match where they might be. And a lot of people do focus on kind of like that small footprint, the same neighborhood. Another interesting stat, and I don't think it comes as any surprise, but new construction purchased by geography, over half of all new construction is purchased in the South. We often talk about the 3 L's, land, labor, and lumber. Right now, both with kind of a more retired, age or retired community looking for homes in the South, but there's just more land. Cost is less than other parts of the country. and obviously there's a little bit more labor. Being located on the West Coast, yeah, the West representing 22%, which is healthy, but there's just no land. And the land that there is, it's really, really expensive. So it's just not appealing to nearly as many builders. But it's pretty interesting to see, with Florida, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee being some of the largest markets within the South, this is really where the biggest opportunity is, as well as this is where people are desiring to kind of live out those later years. This is pretty interesting, and I think it speaks to the age as well. But new construction buyers, they're willing to spend. Over half of them are paying 20% down or more. Over half, once again, they're not concerned about qualifying for a mortgage. But I think the stat that ties to those as well is 45%, almost half, use money from the sale of their previous home to make a purchase of the new home. And with that, we also find that with new construction buyers, people are more willing to go beyond their budget. So once again, these are people who, they're repeat buyers. They maybe don't have the kids around. They're maybe willing to move a little bit further. But those things that concern the millennials or first-time home buyers are not the concerns for most new construction buyers.
These buyers are coming in, again, like we said a little bit ago, is they have lived their first or second home, and they know the drawbacks, they know the mistakes that they've made. They have a much better understanding of what it is they actually want and how they actually want to live. And the numbers come in and show that they're willing to pay and have an understanding that they're going to have to pay to get it, right? And I think that the younger we go in demographic, it's not that they're not willing to spend. A lot of times it's not they're not able to spend. So I think that's the difference between the millennial buyer and the a little bit more established customer for new construction.
Okay. The next thing is we're going to dive into the actual search for new construction. There's a lot of similarities. There's also differences, but it's a parallel journey for new construction and existing home buyers. And there's a lot of resources obviously used by all buyers, but specifically new construction buyers, online resource, that's their number one resource. 76% of people, they say, when looking at and ultimately purchasing new construction, are using some sort of online resource. An interesting one in here is real estate agent or broker. So I know the feeling from it's kind of a love-hate relationship with agents, with a lot of builders, but they still play an important part in the home buying process. They still can bring those potential buyers, to your showrooms, to your homes. And then this will be the first mention of it, and Matt will expand on it throughout this presentation or going through this webinar. But the Home Builder Sales Center, 60% use that resource in ultimately making their decision. And this is something I mentioned we're going to keep coming back to over and over, but it's so crucial that everyone is not only responding to leads, but really providing an experience that puts people over the edge. And like I mentioned, we're going to go over it kind of time and time again throughout this webinar. But then you can see as we move further down, for sale, open house signs, friends, relatives, and then the two kind of shrinking forms of advertising, print ads and direct mail. I wouldn't be surprised in next year's Consumer Housing Trends Report if there's even a bigger gap or wider gap between online home sales centers and the more traditional forms, old print ad and direct mail.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that there's only a 5% difference between the resources used by new construction buyers is between realtor and home builder / sales center. And I think that starts to set the stage to let us know that the sales center of old, where whether maybe it was your garage or maybe it was just where you threw some furniture in there and hung a few lifestyle photos on the wall and said, bam, here we go. Or you just they walked into the foyer and you had a bedroom that converted into an office also / design center where they were supposed to pick everything out, all in that little 10 by 10 bedroom. And I think that this is the opportunity for us as builders to really come in and set the stage for the customer experience all the way through. And, I also find it interesting that only 76% said online was a resource. I'd like to meet that other 24% that said that wasn't, because, it's like the old question, how'd your customer last find you? And they always check on the reg card through signage. That's just typically because it's the first question on your reg card is the last thing they saw. So it'd be interesting to see I'd like to talk to those 24%, but the sales center is going to set, and this is where we start to see this is going to start to tick up. Like Jake was saying, he thinks, and I believe, I also agree, as we start to go into more data next year and the year after, we're going to start to see that part tick up. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's really setting the stage for the customer experience in ways that we can help close the gap between price and cost when it comes to new versus used. So we'll dive into that here in just a bit too.
And it's funny because we often talk about used homes and new construction homes as all these differences, but there's actually quite a few similarities between the two, and we can actually learn a lot from the other side.
Dark side.
77. Sorry, what?
I just said the dark side.
Yeah, the dark side. It's interesting though that you would assume, basically on existing home buyers, that there would be a large group that value private tours, right? This is a home that's been lived in before. They want to see it for themselves. They want to do all the things to try to, this is the biggest home purchase of their life. But 77% consider very or extremely important they value the private home tour for new construction. And I think that goes back to the sales center experience as well. They just value private tours. They want to know that the home is built with the same quality that they know that, resale homes, how they've stood the test of time.
Yeah, and the thing, as you start looking at some of this data and the answers here, 77% consider really value private tours. And so one of the things that you want to pay attention to is, you've heard this term probably thrown out there a lot, is frictionless. So how much friction are we causing the customer, the consumer, to actually come in and see our homes? And so if you look at the growth of the behemoth of company, say Amazon, and what have they done right from the very beginning, which has allowed them essentially world dominance. But they've created a frictionless system that allows consumers to be easy. And so as we're monitoring and as we're evaluating the things that we're doing and our policies, some really simple questions to ask ourselves are we easy to do business with? And is it easy? Is it really out there in front, really easy to find that I can come out there and see this home at my convenience, right? Maybe it's going through an OSC, online salesperson. Maybe it's going to, route its way through the on-site salesperson itself. But is the perception to the buyer, are we making it as frictionless as humanly possible? Because the consumers are telling us this is exactly what they're telling us. 77% consider it very or extremely important to see these private tours. And we just have to make sure that the way we're structuring our company makes it easy for the customer to do that.
Another one is new construction buyers, they're really valuing an inspection report. So 74% of existing buyers, value an inspection report, which I'm surprised it's not higher. But we think that the slight dip is mainly caused because, with the 69% is mainly because this is a new home, right? This should be kind of the latest, greatest, everything should be new. It should be relatively worry-free. But we actually find out that new construction buyers do value this. And there's kind of a myth out there. There's a myth out there that I think we've heard, our grandfathers say something like, they don't make them like they used to. And, I know that agents, especially if they're pushing a resale home, these are things that might be said, or these are things that might be implied, because there's a thought that newer isn't always better, right? That newer, sometimes there's corners being cut. People are more cost conscious. Things are made potentially cheaper these days, when in fact it's quite the opposite. And once again, where the home sales kind of center experience comes in, because this is your opportunity to debunk all of these, to speak very highly of the quality and the process and why homes are built so much stronger to withstand more more energy efficient. They're going to save you money. So this is why I think an inspection report is actually warranted. And one little side story. So I bought a new construction home now about 6 years ago. And, we did an inspection report before we moved in, and our builder actually helped provide that for us, which is great because most builders offer a warranty, and this offered kind of another sense of security for us. But before our year warranty was up, we had an inspection done again to highlight anything that we might have missed, because there's a lot of things, beneath the house or in the walls that, it's I don't have a trained eye for. And that's something that if you're proactive as a builder, maybe that's something you offer. I think that will give people a sense of security as well.
I agree. The old school dare to compare or apples to apples binder that we either used to do or still have out in our sales offices. I think this is the next iteration of that, because obviously this is something that's important to the consumers. And instead of just showing, hey, this is how we stack up against other builders, really showing this is how we stack up against, this is another way to show this is how we stack up against used. This is how, let me show you why. And I can see and envision the marketing campaign out there that this is not your grandfather's home. It's better. And let me show you why. And being able to say, like, let's look at this brand new home. Let's look at these, let's look at the inspection reports of what was turned in. Let's look at what the comments from the inspectors are saying. Let's show you how much more efficient and healthy, which we'll get into, and smart, and all the different technologies that we use to build a home. This is really one of our chances and our best chances to shout it from the rooftops, because it's coming from a trusted third-party source that's completely impartial. And so it's a really great opportunity to kind of spice up these dare to compare or apples to apples binders that only focus in on, what the other builder's doing down the street, and really let those third-party testimonials, because that's really what this is a third-party testimonial of why our homes are better than what was built 20 years ago.
Perfect. All right, so now we're going to go into a little bit about how the process should work, right? So, the buyer, they're starting their journey online. They're looking at sites, whether it's Zillow, it's your own website, it's some others. They're looking at your floor plans, photos, and they like what they see. So then what they do is they reach out to you because they want to learn more. And then ultimately, they're expecting a response. But I know that we've heard this before, and we kind of talk ad nauseum about it, but we do because the numbers are only slightly improving, and they're improving at a pretty slow rate. But not enough builders are following up with the leads coming in, and consumers are on to the next home in minutes, right? We're rather impatient, and so we're moving on quickly. And so once again, the sales center experience, it's pivotal because 52% of people surveyed here are unable to connect with a builder after 24 to 72 hours. That doesn't even address, and I know Matt has some stats on it as well, but people aren't connecting within 24, and then they're definitely not connecting outside of the 24 to 72 hour window as well. And then 61% who are contacted by a builder, they're expressing an interest in a tour. And right, so if people are reaching out and they want to do something, it's on you to work with your sales team or create a path or create a plan to provide them this 5-star experience. And we're not even talking about 5-star anymore. The new 5-star is 6-star. So how can you outperform what was just the previous norm? And then 89% who go on a tour are saying that they have a positive experience. So it's a matter of when you can provide them with this is where you've hooked them. And this is really, in both Matt and our minds, this is how we start to close the gap from that 11% to the 38% or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. The 89%, we talked about that, who go on a tour have a positive experience. And so I really think this flips back around or circles back around to the sales center experience. And then a little bit even further back are we making it a frictionless experience to let them get there? And then once they get into the sales center, this is an opportunity to convert the old sales office from here's a desk and a computer and some lifestyle shots on the walls to really an education center where people can come in and actually learn about construction, learn about you specifically as a builder, see behind the walls, see above the, behind the walls, above the ceiling, and see the different techniques that you use that make you different from other builders that you compete with, and B, most importantly, the used homes down the street. And so utilizing that sales center as an education center is what's going to be pivotal to make sure that the consumer has a positive experience when they come in to view the home. So it's a really, really important thing, and I feel like that as a whole, as an industry, unless you're a lot of times we only see the big national builders that are out there, the really, really big guys that are out there that take the time and the money to set up the sales center that way. There's a reason why the big companies spend a lot of money on these sales centers, because it sets the stage for what's going to happen next, and it sets the stage for education. And if we bring value, just like what we're trying to do here is bring value, and if you bring value to your consumer, then they're going to reward that value with positive experience and a purchase. And that I think is what this all circles back around to.
And I'm glad you mentioned value, because that is a myth that we'll actually go over in a little bit, where there's a myth that new construction maybe doesn't have as much value or doesn't offer the most value for the money. But reasons for purchasing new construction, the first one being, well, everything in the home is new, never used. Almost half of new construction buyers talked about that being one of the main reasons. But once again, right back to the value. Almost 40% said the home was the best value for the money. On the surface, just looking at apples to apples, when you're shopping online, it's not super clear. It's not abundantly clear that new construction offers the value. It's only when they start to interact with sales, they start to interact in the sales center, that they truly see that new construction does in fact offer the best value. You can see throughout this list, there's a lot of things that you would expect to be on here. Obviously the warranty, repetition, or the reputation, free upgrades. But there is one little piece at the very bottom that you might miss, and that's 6%. 6% said that the ability to have the latest smart home features helped with their, which is one of the reasons for purchasing new construction. And this is something that, I think as we continue this survey and put out this report year over year, you're going to see this start to move up the list.
Yeah, that really excites me when we're looking at that as something new that's popped up on our list, and I agree. I think it'll start climbing the list in the coming years. One of the things I think that we do as builders is we still like to hang our hats on energy efficiency, and while that is important because it does save the consumer money, but they expect it to be energy efficient. Now, I mean, everything they buy has an Energy Star logo on it. So if your home isn't energy efficient, they're going to look at you like you've got 5 heads, but because they expect it. It's like, what? You don't have power windows and AC in your car? Like, are you kidding me? It's like saying, hey, my basement doesn't leak. Well, I expect it to not leak. So they expect an energy efficient brand new home. And I think Builder Magazine published an article maybe a few weeks ago or a month or so ago, and they were just talking about how they had done some surveys as well, and how the healthy aspect of homes is starting to pop up on there. So whether it's low VOCs carpet, paint, special drywall, in particular, whether it's air filters through a MERV filtration system, whole home filtration system, whatever it may be, but tying in those smart home features and the healthy home features into what it is that you're doing, into your marketing, into your sales process, that is becoming more and more, it's climbing up on the list more and more. And a lot of times people confuse these things with green. Like, well, people aren't willing to pay, or we've done research in our market, and in our area, it's not about green. Well, green is different because that's carbon footprint. That's the impact you're having on the planet. While yes, that's important. So right now in your areas, maybe consumers aren't willing to pay for that. But when it comes to smart and healthy, when you frame that around the right story, and as we start to see that category climb up the rankings, this is really going to be something that's going to elevate you from everybody else, and you from the existing homes on the market, the used homes on the market, because they don't really have the ability to do that. Yeah, you can take out some carpet and put low VOC or something like that. But when you're talking about doing things that are almost proprietary to being built with the house, special drywall, special HVAC systems, while yes, you technically could do it after the fact, it is quite the pain to do so. So really making sure that we frame up what these things are, what is important to the consumer, and making sure that they can easily access that, and we're talking about it as we go through the process.
Yeah, like you said, they're looking for smart, healthy, and I'll add one more: convenience.
Convenience is key.
You know, and that's where Amazon has really taken over. They made everything super, super, almost too convenient, as my wife would say. So we talk about all the good things, right? And it's healthy, whether you're a builder or you're a company like Zillow. We want to look at why people don't do something, right? Or why would we potentially fail? It's kind of sinister, it's kind of dark, but I think it's healthy to look at the other side of things, because then we can make improvements. So why most people actually don't buy new construction? And from our survey, it's mainly three things. It's location, timing, and price. For location, that's a tough one, right? That's there's no new construction in this person's desired location. So, unless it's like a lot that you're a custom home builder, that you can build a home, if you don't have a community there, that is a tough one to overcome. And then timing, buyers face the end of a lease or sale of their previous property. And this one is being addressed through, a number of different ways, but mainly it's the iBuyer. It's taking the fear of and the stress, I think, is the big point, away from having to sell your home, sell it for the price, having to wait 6, 8, 9 months, where something could happen to your home in that time frame before you actually take the keys to your new home. So this is where the offer pads, the Zillow offers, the Open Doors of the world, and even some brokers are diving into that iBuying, where they actually take that stress away from you by purchasing your home. And then the last being price. There's a lot of hidden costs that I think a lot of builders choose, and for some reasons, rightfully so, choose to not show that stuff or show those hidden costs up front. In my opinion, I think we should be as transparent as possible and show that up front. But at the very least, it goes to the sales center experience again, where you have to communicate and talk about all those costs, because then you'll have a more seamless and a little bit better process and experience as you go through the buying and build process.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to price, and this is where kind of tee up into the next piece of information, but when it comes to price, there's a difference between price versus cost. And are we putting that information out there? He's talking about what deters people. Location, you can't change the physical location of your property. It's there. Timing, you could affect that, like Jake was saying, with iBuyer programs that are out there, or other local programs that you may have teamed up with local real estate agents, or whether you as a builder have some buyback options, or whatever that may be. But when it comes to price, there is a gap. And like I said earlier, it can sometimes be between a 20 to 30%, maybe more gap between new versus used, depending upon your market. And what we really have to do, whether it's on our, on our website, on our marketing material that's out there, our sales centers, when people come into the sales centers and they make it that far, is really show price versus cost, right? Because long-term is going to be the cost of ownership. How much is this home going to cost me the entire time that I own it? Price is that short term, much more upfront. And that's the gap. That's the price is the gap between new and used. But when we explain it the right way and talk about the price versus cost theory, we really show the value in what we do from a new construction standpoint. And, one of the things you might want to do is go back and look at your website. Is that out there? Is it evident? Is it easy to find? And is that something that we're incorporating into our sales process every single time? Is 100% of our prospects getting 100% of our sales process all the time, and making sure that we identify what the price versus cost analysis is?
Yeah, and you pretty much summed up this slide already, which is, myth number one, that new construction is more expensive. We talk about the cost of home ownership. We have, in our survey, we say that, obviously there's calculated costs, right? There's costs that everyone has to deal with, whether it's property taxes, utilities, homeowners insurance. That's the part of everybody's homeowner's budget. But then there's the hidden costs, right? There's, whether it's house cleaning, lawn care, carpet cleaning, central air and heating system repairs, things that just come up. We show through our survey that those costs are upwards of around $3,000 a year, but I know for a fact that it's quite a bit more. And this is part of the education process when you are speaking to them about kind of those hidden costs of home ownership that you may have to deal with a used home, that you may not have to deal with a new home, and promote your warranty. This is one of the biggest assets that I think new construction has. There's also a myth out there that there's more perceived value in existing homes. One of the things that, that agents do a good job of is they'll go around and they'll show obviously a home that's been around for a while, and they can see that this home has good bones. It's 10 years old. It's withstood the test of time to some extent. And with everything new, it's hard to show that this home is going to last as long, or it's built the same way. So one of the things we recommend, if you can do it, is if there's a community that's more established, that's maybe 5, 7, 10 years old, take the time to show potential buyers that community so they can see what everything looks like growing up. The community it's a little bit more built out. They can see the amenities, how they've stood the test of time, and show people that there's just as much, if not more, value over time in new construction than there is in pre-sale or used homes.
Yep.
And then, as we kind of get to the end of this, there's a couple things that buyers want, and they want, and Matt hit on this a lot, and we can talk about it a little bit more, but it's communication. Be open and honest up front with them, because I know we've all heard horror stories throughout the buy process, in the build process of where there's been some miscommunication. So it's always better to over communicate up front and be as open and honest as you can. Have a strong presence online, right? The more that you can list, the more that you can show, the more renderings, the more photos, the more lifestyle images that you can present out there, the more likely that buyer is going to come in with a little bit more confidence, a better feeling. They're going to probably have maybe even some more relevant questions about the whole process. They're going to be more educated, and we know that a more educated buyer is a stronger buyer. And then quality. I mentioned this before, but show them proof. They don't make them like they used to. Well, actually, that's true, because they make them better now. And show them what a community looks like over time that's withstood maybe even 15 years out there.
Yeah, kind of going through each one of these points, Jake, you mentioned, but, before you said, the new 5-star is the 6-star, right? The customer experience. And if you want the secret to the new 5-star, the 6-star, then communication is going to be key. And we're in a time, unfortunately, I think, that if you want to do that, if you want to have great communication, it boils down to simply just a couple things. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, and making sure that our teams in place are doing that as well. So if we tell somebody we're going to call them on Tuesday at 12, then we definitely call them on Tuesday at 12. And, how many times have you waited for the cable person, or have you had a repair person coming to your house and they said they were going to be there on Tuesday at noon and they don't show up until Wednesday at 4 out of nowhere, and it's just so frustrating. And that has been the new expectation of, if we just simply do what we said we were going to do when we said we were going to do it, and communicate that the right way, a lot of times we're going to get to that 6-star rating. They're going to have a great experience, because we're setting the example up front about that communication. And that carries through to online, as far as making sure that we're making ourselves a resource to shoppers as they're on our website. And then from a quality perspective, circle back around to take the opportunity to, whether it's customer testimonials, whether it's the inspection reports, home inspection reports, but utilize those third-party tools that we have to show them why this home is better than the old home, and it's not the opposite. It is the opposite of the perceived thought process of they just don't build them like they used to. And like Jake said, you're right, they don't. They build them better. And so having these things kind of tie together, and all ties back in as they come into the sales center for those private tours, is a really, really big thing. It will help you close that gap, and it'll help you go from, as a market, from getting 11% of the transactions, instead of having 38% want it and 11 people buy it. Maybe we can inch the needle up, and maybe we can go from 38% to 20% just by improving just some core things and making sure that our messaging is right and that we're making it a frictionless experience.
So as we wrap up here, I'm going to tie a little bow on this, but first we just want to remind everyone that it all starts with the online experience. Make sure your website is updated and it's easy to navigate. Quality images, and not just quality, quantity. Optimize your website for mobile viewing. Most people are viewing, looking at homes online and specifically on their mobile device. And show all of your inventory, and then share customization options, hidden costs once again, and then post customer reviews. And then keep in mind the new construction journey, it's personal. These are, previous home buyers, they're your biggest asset. So 98% definitely probably would consider new construction in the future. Here at Zillow, we work with all different types of builders. And, a couple times a year, somebody's going through the process of purchasing a new construction home, because we're always so much in touch with everyone that we just, there's no choice but to do that for us, it seems like. But everyone we talk to after having gone through the process and lived in their home, everyone who's bought new construction that I talked to would buy new construction again. So it's getting beyond that kind of initial hurdle. And then 65% definitely probably would actually, recommend their builder, which is huge. So, use that, promote that, put that on your website. And then in the end, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more information, so much more things that we can do together. And then I will just give one shout out for Zillow, which is take a look at our resource center. I included a link here, write that down, go to it directly. It's a hub of a ton of information. Many of builders that are probably on this webinar have actually contributed to the site, contributed to the content. But most importantly, we're in the process of finalizing the 2019 Consumer Housing Trends Report, and then specifically having another new construction specific report as well, which will update us on not only all the information that we had this current and previous year, but we're going to have additional information on there as well. You can actually sign up, get an alert, and it should be ready end of October, early November, and you'll be able to download the digital copy as well. I don't know, I can speak for myself and say, it's a pleasure being able to speak to everyone here. Matt, I'll let you kind of take us out, and then I'm going to quit sharing this, and then I believe we're going to be able to take some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We've got a couple questions. Angela, do you want me to go through those? Do you want to go through those?
Sure. You go ahead. That was fantastic, Jake. Thank you very much. It was very insightful, and I have to say, after I have just completed a 3-year renovation, and so I am probably the perfect candidate to ask why you should buy new.
Yeah, right.
Next time.
Yeah, so we had a couple questions come in. Just as a reminder, this will be available as a download. Angela and the Lasso team will be sending that email out within the next 24 to 48 hours, bearing any technical issues that would slow that down. But yes, so that will be out. That will come out to you all, and you'll be able to stream that later. So if you want to share that with your sales teams or anybody else on your team as well. One question, Jake, and I don't know the answer to this. Do you have any? This is curious. This is from Carmen. Do you have any numbers for single family versus condo / townhomes, or do you in your data, or maybe in some upcoming data, do you have any of that broken apart?
That's a great question. I'll be the first to admit that I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
I am writing it down. I also know that we'll have a copy of this question. Definitely can follow up, but I'm not sure if that is in the new report. I'm going to venture to say that we probably don't have specifically that information, but with Zillow, we have a ton of data. We can probably pull it from somewhere.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right. And so another question we'll grab here is somebody requested some more info on healthy home. And I'm assuming that means what to look at, what to look for, maybe what that entails. And from my perspective, and being as a builder at the time that rolled out a healthy home program in a very competitive market in Raleigh, North Carolina, it was for us. It was showing them why that mattered. So obviously it's the stuff. So we used particular drywall that was a low VOC. We use whole home filtration system, MERV systems. So if you don't know about MERV, it's a different. We used a MERV 16 system, and the higher the number goes, 16 being at the kind of the top, was the better the filtration. And so it takes pollutions and allergens and things like that out of the air for people with allergies or asthma. But obviously focusing in just on the individual products is one thing, but then turning it into an actual solution and why it matters to the consumer and how it's going to affect their day-to-day life. Because if we're just going through and we're just pointing out, hey, look at this special drywall, or hey, look at this whole home, HVAC system from a filtration. Yes, those are points that we want to make sure we call out, but we have to talk about how it's going to impact their life. And so it's like, hey, do you and anybody in your family suffer from allergies or asthma or, whatever it may be? And so you'll be surprised when you start asking these questions, what comes out. And then you really start making a difference. And when you start comparing new versus used versus other new construction, and really how that's going to improve their life. And I think it's, whether it's healthy homes, it's smart homes, and it's energy efficiency, instead of those being just individual things that we talk about, it's much more a sum of all of its parts, right? So they're all ingredients to the chili recipe. And we want to make sure that we lay that out there as a holistic approach and how all of these things interact with one another and make their life better, right? And that's really what they want to pay for, is how is this going to impact my life, right? A lot of times we're willing to pay for convenience. And so kind of the same scenario, and at least from my perspective, when it comes to how we lay out, healthy homes, smart homes, all that good stuff. Okay. What else? We have a couple, so let's see here. The last question I think we've got here, that can make sense of. Any data available on square footage based on age group / income levels? That might be a follow-up question, and maybe something to follow back up.
Is 100% a follow-up question. I know we do have information because we do have a product called Inform that we can actually kind of decipher kind of what to build, where to build, and what to price it for. There's something in there that I'm sure we can pull from that's gonna help answer that. So
there's some clarity on that. Was essentially they messaged in what that age group or different income groups from a square footage, what they're desiring, what their expectations are for their search from a square footage perspective. Maybe that's a bigger picture thing instead of specifically new construction. But maybe if they're in the market for a $500,000 home, maybe what their square footage requirement or expectation or what they desire.
Yeah, for many years it was kind of like, bigger is always better, right? The more square footage is seen with maybe a better home or more desirable, but people, you're seeing people go the other way in their homes, and people are, in some areas living more minimalist. So interesting question. We'll do our best to drum up as much data as we can around that.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, guys. In the interest of time, I'm just looking at the clock right now. It's about 5 to 10 on the West Coast. I want to thank you guys very, very much for that. That was super insightful. And everybody, just a reminder, the recording and the slides will be available to you within the next 24 hours. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you again. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.